Hello, friends. Welcome to Into the Greenwood Splitting Arrows, where we look at Robin Hood films from over the past 100 years and consider how our adaptations of the character have changed. Tonight we're watching The Bandit of Sherwood from 1946, a film starring Cornel Wilde as the son of Robin Hood. There will be several films over the course of our Splitting Arrows that follow that theme, an older Robin Hood and his child who has taken up his reins in some way. This is also the first of the films that I have not seen previously myself. Before we get into the episode proper, though, there's a few notes that I think we need to cover first. Starting with a very brief historical lesson. The film's plot centers around the Magna Carta, otherwise known as the Great Charter, a document originally signed and sealed by King John in the year 1215 in order to stave off war with rebellious barons who were resenting the power and authority of the king at a time when the king was, well, let's say, abusing that power and authority to help make up for costly wars with the King of France and with his contestations with the church. Now, the Magna Carta didn't succeed in preventing a war, but it was an important moment in legal history. It helped establish limits on the power of the monarchy. And while some of the language may have helped inspire future documents, and mentions things such as all freemen being guaranteed trial, it's really primarily based around securing the rights and privileges of the barons, who were the ones pressuring John to sign this, and who were concerned for themselves. The common people of England benefited very little directly from this, especially the serfs and villains, those who would not be considered free men. Now, the film takes place shortly after the death of King John, when his son, a young Henry III, is king with William Marshal as his regent. In the film, William Marshal is attempting to revoke the Magna Carta in some sort of strange power grab that's not really quite very well explained. In reality, William Marshal helped reissue the Magna Carta in 1216 and again in 1217, in a move to help cement the young king's power by getting the barons to come to his side, as opposed to that of the French king, who was making a play on England at the time. The other note I feel forced to mention before the episode properly begins is a content warning. One of the first scenes in the movie includes a sexual assault from our main character, and at least a hint at potential attempted rape. It's problematic, to say the very least, and we're forced to discuss it with at least a little bit of length in the episode. And I want to make something very clear. Not only do we here at Into the Greenwood find that sort of behavior entirely inappropriate, we're also not willing to let creators off the hook for this sort of portrayal in past works either. There's no standard of the time that excuses the sort of behavior that is presented in this film. As evidence of that, I'm going to share a brief section from the work Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a medieval poem that was originally composed around the same time as the early medieval Robin Hood ballads. It is fairly contemporaneous and reflects some of the attitudes that existed during that time in the late Middle Ages. The section I'm going to read is from the translation by J.R.R. Tolkien into modern idiom, which would have been a work that he had been focusing on roughly around the same time as this movie was being made in the 1940s. So whether we're talking about the standards of today in the year 2021, when this podcast is being recorded, the standards of 1940s, when the movie was made, or the late Middle Ages. There is never any sort of excuse for the sort of behavior that is portrayed in this film.
And yet, as to kisses, she quoth, this counsel I gave you. Wherever favour is found, defer not to claim them. That becomes all who care for courteous manners. Take back, said the true knight, that teaching, my dear, for that I dared not do, for dread of refusal. Were I rebuffed, I should be to blame for so bold an offer. Ma fée, said the fair lady, you may not be refused. You are stout enough to constrain one by strength, if you like, if any were so ill-bred as to answer you nay. Indeed, by God, quoth Gawain, you graciously speak, but force finds no favour among the folk where I dwell, and any gift not given gladly and freely.
And now I present Into the Greenwood, Episode 7, Splitting Arrows, The Bandit of Sherwood.
As we got a whole movie to watch, we should probably get on with this.
Indeed.
Well, welcome to another episode of Splitting Arrows, where tonight we are going to view 1946's The Bandit of Sherwood, the first film that is an entry in what I'm considering a subgenre of the child of Robin Hood films. Joining me here, I have yet again Richard Hopkins Lutz, or Rick, and Annie Jacobson. How are you both doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. My first podcast.
I'm doing pretty good. Looking forward to another Robin Hood movie, or son of Robin Hood movie.
Yes, and speaking of it being the son of Robin Hood, it is based on a 1941 novel titled The Son of Robin Hood by Paul Castellan. It was made because producer Clifford Sanforth, film producer Clifford Sanforth, was watching 1938's The Adventures of Robin Hood with his son. His son, presumably, supposedly, rumoredly, asked, did Robin Hood ever have a son? And Sanforth said, I don't know, but I bet there's money there. So he found this novel that had come out just a few years before, acquired the film rights, and brought it to Columbia Pictures, and they were ready to move forward with this. But MGM was at that time trying to make a film based on an operetta called Robin Hood, and so they had a film with the name Robin Hood in the title in the works. And so rather than have a legal battle about being able to use just the name Robin Hood, Columbia ditched The Son of Robin Hood as the title and went with The Bandit of Sherwood Forest.
All right.
It was written by Wilfred H. Pittett, Melvin Levy, and the novel's writer, Paul Castellan. It was directed by Henry Levine and George Sherman. It stars Cornell Wilde as Robert of Nottingham, the titular bandit, supposed son. It has Anita Louise as Lady Catherine Maitland. According to some Hollywood legend, she was the one originally cast to play Maid Marian in the 1938 Adventures of Robin Hood, until the studio decided that Olivia de Havilland would be a better choice based on her previous success in films with Errol Flynn. This movie also has Jill Esmond as the Queen Mother, Edgar Buchanan as Friar Tuck, Henry Daniel as William of Pembroke, George McReady as Fitzherbert, Russell Hicks as Robin Hood, the father, Earl of Huntington. We also have John Abbott as Will Scarlett, Lloyd Corrigan as the Sheriff of Nottingham, Eva Moore as Mother Meg, Ray Teal as Little John, Leslie Dennison as Alan Adale, Ian Wolfe as Lord Mortimer, and Maurice Tolson as King Henry III. Now, I am not a huge movie buff. A few of those names sound vaguely familiar to me, like Russell Hicks and Ian Wolfe, but I can't think of any of these actors, anything else I've seen with them. I know Cornell Wilde played Lancelot in The Sword of Lancelot 13 years after this, but I'm really not familiar with his work or the work of anybody else associated with this movie. How about you,
No,
Rick?
I haven't heard
Any of those names ring a bell for you?
I've seen Jill Esmond in something. It's gonna bug me.
Well, I have IMDb pulled up right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at her filmography.
I haven't heard of any of them.
She played Queen Eleanor in a couple of episodes of the Adventures of Robin Hood television series from the 1950s, the one that starred Richard Green. I've seen those episodes. They're amazing.
There you go.
So apparently she's
well qualified.
Yes. So, given that this is a lesser known movie, I'm pretty sure none of us have seen this one before.
I have not.
Oh, The Skin Game. Hitchcock's The Skin Game. That's what I've seen her in. She just looked familiar. Anyway, I've never seen this movie before. I've seen very few Cornell Wilde movies too.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what to expect here. I saw Henry III is our king, so we're past the storyline with Richard and John, as is only reasonable. So we've apparently moved on to John's son, Henry.
Well, and according to Wikipedia, the film did pretty well at the box office in the U.S. So it was popular at the time that it was made.
I read a few reviews. They were not especially flattering, but they said it was a decent sort of what we would call nowadays a popcorn flick. You know, it had some good action. I think one of them even said decent enough in a turn off your brain sort of way.
Some of my favorite movies are decent enough in a turn off your brain sort of way.
I love that was the thing in the 40s too. Like, I don't want to go into the movies and like have to think. I just want to watch the people swashbuckle. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of I always find it when people like poo-poo on a popcorn flick. Like, you know what, Martin Scorsese bashed like the MCU movies. Who cares? They're fun. Oh, yeah, they're not like high art.
What, Martin Scorsese? You don't like fun?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, that's the thing. Is like a movie doesn't have to be high art to be enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sort of, with all that in mind, I'm not expecting to be heavily moved in any particular way, but I'm expecting it to be a fun film, and I'm expecting it to be something new and different, because it's not going to just be a retelling of the Robin Hood story. It's going to be a story of something or other that happens afterwards. So there's going to be a brief musical interlude. We're going to pause the recording, watch the film, then we will come back, resume recording, and give everyone our reactions to it.
All right.
Excellent.
All right, pop your popcorn, everyone.
All right, did.
Wow. Okay, so that was a movie. We're back from watching 1946's The Bandit of Sherwood, who I don't think at any point was a bandit.
No, not really.
No,
not really.
I mean, he did kill a couple people.
Well, kind of at the beginning when he was riding around smashing copies of the Regent's decree about repealing the Magna Carta.
That was my favorite part when he was just like, treachery, and he runs by and grabs the thing out of his hand.
He also didn't spend a whole lot of time in Sherwood Forest. They made it clear that he's not from Sherwood Forest because all of the merrymen are like, who the heck is this guy? And we didn't spend a lot of time in Sherwood Forest, and what time we spent wasn't much of a forest. They looked like they were just kind of in like Hollywood sets, but it was all like sparse park ground with like 5 trees.
Bushes.
Bushes that came up to their knees. Dude, that movie. So here's the thing: the basic plot of the movie, I enjoyed. I genuinely liked the plot of the movie. I thought that it was pretty good. The first 15-20 minutes are full of political intrigue. You got a lot of Robin, the original Robin, going around. Never mind, he's a lord riding around with no retinue, but well, whatever.
I did not love the plot of the movie because it felt just like a rerun of what you would expect of a typical Robin Hood plot. We have the regent being the exact same as Prince John as the regent. The king that they're trying to reinstall on the throne isn't the king who's away at the Crusades. Instead, it's a young Henry III who's just a boy. But it's that same basic idea of like, oh, there's a good king we want to put on the throne and foil the plots of the evil regent who's trying to steal his power. It felt too much like an also-ran to me.
Well, I mean, it is. I'm saying I didn't hate it. I'm saying I thought it was fine and serviceable. I didn't say it was,
Yes. I would say serviceable is a good description of the plot of that movie.
I was just hoping for something different. I was hoping to see a different take in some way, and seeing it be just a weaker version of the story we've seen before was a decided disappointment.
As far as I'm concerned, Cornel West is a bargain bin.
Cornel Wilde.
Cornel Wilde, sorry. Cornel Wilde is a bargain bin Errol Flynn.
I actually think he's more of a bargain bin Douglas Fairbanks, because he had that kind of athleticism, but not the acting chops and presence.
He had a nice ass. Can I say that on your podcast?
Yes.
He like, I don't know, he seemed more like kind of an overgrown 12-year-old most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of constantly had this slightly mischievous air to him, but it grew.
He wasn't being mischievous. He was just being.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like he's acting like he's being mischievous. Like I said, it's like a 12-year-old who like does a dick move, but then acts like just a prank, bro.
So he starts off, he sexually assaults Lady Catherine, and she's like kind of into it, but kind of not. And then he pretends he doesn't tell anybody who he is. They're like, "Well, who the are you coming into our forest?" And he's like, you'll never guess.
Well, and to be clear, so for the listeners here, we're not exaggerating when we say sexually assault. Like, he literally was about to throw her on the ground and have his way with her because he thought she was rando lone scullery maid.
Yeah, he makes her slip when she's on a log and catches her. And then when he puts her down, he doesn't let go, even though she's clearly trying to get away. He says, "I think you owe me for having caught you," and then kisses her, just immediately full on kisses her, and then comments on how he could have his way with her.
And starts to push her to the ground. Like, he grabs her shoulder and is like, it is, from a modern standpoint, and even should have been back in the 40s, kind of a disturbing thing.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty bad.
It was extremely bad.
That, for when you hit the low points, I think that might be my low point of the movie.
It has to be. There's almost no way to get lower than that. I mean, it's a movie with plenty of low points, But that one really takes it there.
I mean, you gotta love the way they always turn it around, and he sexually assaults her. Then she's like, "Hey, you're kind of cute. Like, I kind of like that."
Well, it's that 1940s, women want to be dominated.
Mm-hmm.
She was just wanting to wash her ankles in the pond, and he was all up in her business.
And in the second scene they have together, she says, as Rick was saying, "Oh, I wouldn't have minded if you went further." And then in their third scene, they both profess their love for one another.
Seriously. It's like there's whirlwind romances, and then here's a random person you met and had a few dozen words with. Suddenly you're madly in love with one another.
She must have been just really into his like teeny tiny thin mustache that he had.
Well, she could have been into his ass like you were, or his pretty muscular arms. Dude was swole.
He had nice arms. He had nice arms.
Swole. I like that he was swollen. They still patted his shoulders.
That was weird.
Like he looked like he was wearing football gear.
Can we talk about the costumes?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely need to talk about the costumes because it blew my mind how heavily they recycled wardrobe from the 1938 adventures of Robin Hood. Our primary villain, William Earl of Pembroke, the regent, who historically would have been William Marshall, recorded as being one of the greatest knights in all of history, and who in reality would have been about 70 years old when the movie supposedly takes place.
And was very loyal to the king.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely loyal to the king.
Minor historical.
I know, right?
We already covered the turn off your brain part with this film.
God, you gotta.
But he's got like 3 or 4 costumes that he wears, and one is one of Prince John's costumes from the 38 film, and one is one of Sir Guy of Gisborne's costumes from the 38 film. And he's trying to play both roles, essentially. He's being the Prince John of this movie and the Sir Guy of Gisborne of this movie.
And is not as good as he is. He is a discount aisle Basil Rathbone at best. He wasn't. Oh gods, why are you so terrible? He just wasn't up to the part. Up to kind of what we wanted him to be.
He was phoning it in. He was just getting a paycheck from MGM or 20th Century Fox or whomever.
Yeah, we'll get to some more into how he was not Basil Rathbone later. But Annie, you wanted to talk more about the costumes?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was all about Robert's sparkly tunic because that was amazing, and he should have kept that on the whole end scene.
He was quite bedazzled.
It was so bedazzled. It was all the sleeves and the hem. It just had, I don't know where they found like sparkly gems in 12th century, but
yeah. The in 1216 sequence were all the rage.
Sure, it's true.
Well, and then my other favorite part with the costumes was when Lady Catherine and the Queen were sneaking out, pretending to be scullery maids, but waving their cloaks like as wide and as distracting as possible.
That's how scullery maids walk.
There wasn't even any attempt to dirty up their costumes, make them ragged. I never would have guessed that they were supposed to be serving women of any stripe, much less scullery maids, unless the actors had not told us so.
Right. And the whole scullery maids in the forest.
Right.
Whew.
Oh gosh.
It was not the best.
No.
The Merry Men looked all right. Oh, another note on the costuming. One of my first notes I wrote down was no lack of green tights.
That's true. So many green tights.
The Merry Men were fully tighted.
I will say one of my favorite moments in the movie was the bit with the gate when they were escaping. And
that was pretty.
The guard is just like, "Hey, I can't open this." And the other guard is like, "Okay, I'll open it for you." And they sneak out behind his back. And then he's like, "Okay, well, I guess I'll just close this now."
Right? And keep in mind, it's the middle of the night. Why is he even opening it?
It made no sense.
No, to be fair, as far as we can tell, all of these workers were just blue collar. If they were lucky, they were making minimum wage. Just they didn't care. They weren't paid enough to even scream when they were getting killed. Like seriously, like 3 guards in a row get killed. None of them scream.
Not a peep. They were just like, take me now. I'm ready to be done with this.
Oh God, give me the sweet release of death.
I mean, I was pretty ready to be done with the movie by that point too.
Yeah.
It was mercifully short, hour and 27 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they had a plan of the castle, which they said, and they laid out on the table, and they all looked at it together. But then they didn't realize that they were going to be able to see the king escaping down the rope from the regent's room. That bothered me. I was like, I feel like you should have known that.
Yeah, this
turning off the brain.
This was not a movie where like I'm gonna beg for my hour and a half back, but
I was entertained for sure.
Yeah, I was entertained. So for instance, I enjoyed Russell Hicks as Robin.
Yeah, he wasn't bad.
Hood, Earl of Runnington. I thought he was like his part of the movie was actually like he was solid. That's the part of the movie. Like I said, like the first 15-20 minutes of the movie, that was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
I was pretty happy with just about all of our classic Merry Men. They felt like nice, solid, iconic versions of themselves. I liked the Friar Tuck a good amount. Yeah, they felt like who they were all supposed to be, and it really worked. They had a good few moments of banter here and there.
Actually, I will say it was actually one of the better portrayals of Alan Adale that I've seen, because it's kind of unfair because he's a character who doesn't actually get developed out or really portrayed even in some of the Robin Hood movies, but he was an integral part of the whole plot to save the king and everything, and he did a whole espionage thing, and it was good. He did do an espionage. He did do an espionage. Look, I'm doing an espionage.
And then it got messed up when they lowered the king out the window and everybody could see. I just like how it doesn't matter if you're in today time or the 12th century, rich people are all assholes, because all of those guys at the beginning were just like, okay, I guess you're just going to revoke Magna Carta. Cool, right? Here, have all my men. And Robin was the only one to be like, hey, you can't do that. And then they just banished him.
There was one dude who was kind of like, can I think about this? And they're like, no.
That's right. That was another weird thing, choosing the Magna Carta as a plot point, and the idea of revoking it to take away liberty from the people and their power to choose, because that's definitely not what the Magna Carta does.
Whoever wrote that bit has just never read the Magna Carta. Just like, that was the thing. It like gave people rights, right? Yeah, let's make them take that away.
Which people did it give rights to? Oh, the barons. Those are the ones that were given rights by the Magna Carta, who in this movie are the ones voting to revoke it.
Hold up.
I feel like it was like an American writer that was like, what reference point can we use that like Americans will understand? Like, okay, maybe Magna Carta is like the Declaration of Independence.
You know, I remember being taught in school that the Magna Carta was sort of this foundational document that inspired the U.S. Declaration of Independence and Constitution. That it was part of this chain of liberty that existed. And I guess somebody got that same crappy public school education and just ran with it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it was a strange plot point, but this is a movie of strange plot points. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, like the old woman in the hut.
Yeah.
I
Mother
was,
Meg, was it?
I was expecting to see her again. I was sad she didn't come back.
Right?
I loved when she stuck out her tongue at Robert. She was like,
she was just comedic, kind of comedic interlude.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this movie I went into it expecting slightly more. Like, I wasn't expecting much. But like Annie, I at least had general fun, but
I feel like I laughed a lot and it wasn't a comedy.
You're right. You were cracking up. I was watching you.
Yeah, watching your reactions was definitely the best part of the movie.
Oh man.
Oh my god, and the weird framing of the shots. Like at the beginning when they're having that discussion and the guy's head only comes up to the half part of the screen and the upper half of the screen is all just the wall. It was so weird.
Yeah, it's a I can't even say it's flawed, because flawed would imply that it's just a minor thing, but it's just the movie
it wallows in mediocrity.
Yes, it wallows in mediocrity. I believe I used mediocre to reference somebody in this movie.
So let's go ahead and jump into our list of questions. We covered a lot in terms of our basic expectations and the depictions of the main characters. And of the familiar main characters, Robin Hood and his band, it fared pretty well. How about most impressive feat of archery? And we did have at least a little bit of archery in this film.
So I will say I'm pretty sure they hired a trick archer for the scene in the forest where they're trying to establish Robert as an archer. And they have a thing where they're shooting torches that are thrown. A fiery brand.
Firing arrows. They were arrows.
No,
I thought they were just fiery brands. But I mean, assuming that they actually did use a trick archer for that was actually pretty impressive.
Well, so as a matter of fact, not only did they use a trick archer, they used the trick archer. Howard Hill.
Howard Hill!
Howard Hill was credited in this movie as technical advisor. And
who did all the real shots.
Yes. And presumably helped train Cornell Wilde and others to at least not look like idiots when they're holding the bows.
I mean, I feel like they all kind of looked like idiots holding the bows.
Well, okay, they just looked like idiots, but it wasn't the bows that made them look like idiots.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I preferred personally how hard Will Scarlet could throw the flaming arrow so that Robert could hit it. He was just literally throwing arrows and they were going through the air as though they'd been shot from a bow.
Yeah, it's true. Clearly there was one person off screen who fired an arrow in the air, and then also off screen Howard Hill was firing his arrows to hit them in mid-flight.
It was a good thing that they had archers because nobody knew how to hold a sword.
That's true. The sword fighting was super weird. We'll get to that, I think, a little bit later also. Next question. What was the best example of swashbuckling action?
Ugh.
Probably the last sword fight, because that was mostly the only sword fighting.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for this one because there was nothing that jumped out and impressed me. We did have that sword fight at the end, but I couldn't bring myself to even write that one down because it is so much cribbing off of the iconic fight between Basil Rathbone and Errol Flynn from the 1938 film, even to the point of them doing like the shadows on the wall at one point.
Yeah, I saw that. I noticed that. And here's the thing is you've got Cornell Wilde there and a really energetic stunt guy.
Yeah, exactly. Part of what makes the 1938 fight scene work so well is that is Errol Flynn and that is Basil Rathbone, and these two good actors who are in these roles where there is so much emotion and tension clearly on display in their faces, in their every movement, is part of what makes that work so well. And when you're having a stunt double doing all of the fighting, so everything is filmed, so it's him from the back or far or distant shots, you're obviously not going to get that same effect. So our one like big sword fight in the film was a huge just disappointment.
Yeah.
I couldn't get over the fact that whatever the regent dude's name was looked like a discount Vincent Price.
He did. That is Henry Daniell, who Henry Daniell is the name of the actor. I should have recognized that name earlier when we were going over the cast list because he also plays pretty much the exact same character, Lord Wolfingham, in the movie The Seahawk. And that was one of those Errol Flynn swashbucklers that I watched a million times as a kid. And he was playing, as I said, the exact same character, this conniving nobleman who is trying to position himself to become the ruler of England.
Well, and didn't you say, like, when we were watching that they tried to train that guy to, like, be a sword fighter, and he was so bad that the
stunt coordinator for the Seahawks said that he was an absolute disaster to work with, which is probably why they just didn't even try with him in this movie.
Right. It was just so obviously a stunt double.
Yeah.
And part of it was is Wilde just couldn't sell it. He's overall, he just isn't as charismatic as the part really needed. He's just not.
I mean, to be fair to everybody else in that movie, barely anybody was selling it.
This is true.
Yeah. This movie felt like a money grab.
The only one that was selling it was the guy that was playing actual Robin Hood.
Yeah, right. I would say him and like a couple of the other Merriman actors, Alan Adale, Friar Tuck. Friar Tuck was definitely trying to sell it. That guy, he was going all in.
Well, the Queen actually did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Especially when she was crying up against the wall with her hand dramatically placed.
That collie dog that was whimpering next to the young king. Oh, yeah. That dog had more acting chops than most of the cast.
And I have to say the actress who played Lady Catherine, she was trying to have chemistry. Trying. Dude, like seriously, Wilde is so wooden. But again, he has that kind of look at me. I'm just like, oh God. I didn't actually hate him, but man, I just wanted to slap him a couple times.
He wasn't any more, I don't think he was any more or less likable than the actual regent, because they were both dicks the whole time.
Right?
The villain was at least appropriately dickish.
Yeah.
Including that scene where he's telling the Sheriff of Nottingham to murder young Henry III by pushing him out a window.
Imagine he's standing in the window and you have your hand on his shoulder, that he falls.
It'd be very dangerous, wouldn't it? Wink, wink.
That was so bizarre.
I'm the villain, in case you didn't know.
It's like, I want you to take care of him. What does that mean? Take care of him. I mean, it was so, like, it was cartoonish.
So I think we're going to have to give a goose egg to examples of swashbuckling action. It was lackluster. There was a bit of sword play here and there. The one big fight scene that was a disappointment.
Oh, talk about wittiest banter. You should get a real woman to go.
He was all ready to dress up in a dress and pretend to be the prioress.
I thought there was going to be some cross-dressing, and I was disappointed.
I agree. I was expecting that too. There's a scene in the movie where they're going to infiltrate the castle by impersonating a prioress who was traveling through the area. And it's just the merrymen discussing this plan. It sounds like Will Scarlet is going to be disguising himself as the prioress. But then Lady Catherine has just said, no, let me go. Which didn't actually make a whole lot of sense, especially since this was the castle that she was from, so they would, in theory, recognize her. So a cross-dressing Will Scarlet would have actually been a better disguise than the lady.
Especially since she wasn't disguised at all. She was literally just wearing a black cloak.
That's a disguise. I mean, obviously, she's church people.
The church people, yes, that's what they said.
Whew. There were a few good lines in the movie, though.
Yes.
Do any of you have any nominations for wittiest bit of banter?
I mean, my favorite moment was when the regent goes to Lady Catherine, to the Queen, and he's like, "We're taking your son away," and then from outside you hear the boy say, "Mother, they're taking me away."
I mean, it was on point.
And then you just get a shot of that oddly like old-looking child like getting dragged away.
I have no idea how old the actor was, but man, yeah, he kind of looked like he was in his 20s.
He looked like a very, very short adult man.
He sure acted, and by acted I mean like in terms of acting ability, like he was an 8-year-old.
It's fair.
That was rough.
That was rough.
Rick, did you have any nominations for wittiest bit of banter?
God, I can't really think of anything that I thought was especially witty. Not really. I mean, most of it, some of it probably would have been witty if it had been delivered better.
I had a hard time with it early in the film because there were a lot of lines that were Robert's flirting with Catherine or some of his banter with the merry men that came off like it was supposed to be clever and witty, but was either creepy or insulting and and juvenile in both ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But there were a few lines later that I did quite like. There was one line he had that I liked where he's locked up in the prison. He meets with the regent. The regent is going to duel him in 3 days rather than kill him right now.
That was pretty good. Okay, I'll give you that.
And Lady Catherine from the other cell calls out, "Oh, are you all right? I heard the regent in there. You know, I was worried he was going to kill you now." And he responds with, No, he just decided that he wouldn't die today. That line was pretty good.
I liked when he slapped the jug out of his hand and it shattered on the floor.
So the actor, by the way, who played King Henry, he actually only has like a few acting credits, but he was like 14, 15 at the time.
I mean, I think that makes sense because the historical Henry III would have been about 9 at this time, and it felt like somebody older trying to play young.
Yeah.
Well, he certainly had his adult bone structure in his face already developed.
Young voice though, like his voice hadn't quite dropped completely yet.
So I had 2 other examples for good banter that I liked. One was when we just have the 2 guards who are the companions of the prioress sitting at the inn. And one of them just starts randomly talking about how he heard from a crusader about this animal called a camel. And he says, "Oh yeah, it's true. They have this beast in the only lives in the Holy Land. It's called a camel. And it can drink enough ale to stay drunk for 7 days." And the other guard just looks at him and says, "Well, what a beast can do, a man can do," and downs his tankard.
That was good. I liked that scene.
My other nomination was when Robin Hood and the Merry Men capture one of the regent's guards. They have him tied to a tree. They're trying to get him to reveal some of the regent's plans. Robin intimidates him by shooting an arrow such that it lands like right next to the guard's head. And Friar Tuck admonishes him. He says, "Robin!" And the guard says, "Oh, thank you, Holy Friar." And then Friar Tuck says, "In the old days, you would have clipped his ear neatly."
Yes. And then, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll try again." And then the old man tied to the tree is like, "No, I give up. Please don't clip my ear," which is the worst form of torture, apparently.
clipped ears or not, I wouldn't want people shooting arrows at my head, even if it was Robin Hood.
The thing is like, yes, there are little tiny bits of witty banter, but very little from the actual main lead.
Oh, yeah.
Person you expect. You actually do. Now that I think about it, I will say that the little exchange he has with William of Pembroke in his cell, the whole thing about 3 days to live, 3 days till I kill you and things like that. That was all right. And the follow up line with Catherine was okay. Yeah, it was good, but
well, and
Okay, just-
Cornel Wilde just seemed like he was just after he delivered every line, he kind of had this like smirk on his face, like, haha, look, I delivered a line.
You're not wrong. That's why I said, he's kind of like a 12-year-old, where he's expecting gratification or reward for having done a thing.
So, next question. Who wins the Merriest Man Award? The character, aside from Robin Hood, that you would most want as a member of your outlaw gang, and why?
I'm going to say Alan Adale, because he was competent. He was good at his job. He got shit done.
Yeah, Alan Adale, have to go with that. He infiltrates the castle. He makes a map of the castle. He's able to either befriend the guards and distract them or shank them in the back as needed.
Yeah, he was, in fact, a D&D bard properly played.
I can't argue with that.
I mean, I liked Will Scarlet because he was most down to cross-dress.
Okay, Annie, are we going to have to watch Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, or
Yes.
Wong Fu?
Favorites, all-time favorites.
So my old high school did a play this year called The True Story of Robin Hood. They did a filmed version of the play because of COVID and everything. They went to a private island off the coast of Florida where some rich guy had built a castle for himself. They got permission to film in this castle. So they used this castle, they used this grounds, they filmed their production there, and then they just put this up on the internet.
Wow.
And the whole premise of this was that Robin Hood didn't exist. It was just Maid Marian cross-dressing. And leading a double life. Oh, I can't be Robin Hood. I'm Maid Marian. You know who I am.
And oh my God,
please, the story narrator is, I think, Alana Dale. It was a female Alana Dale who then cross-dresses and joins the Merry Men also.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And Will Scarlet, she finds out during her time there, is also a woman dressed as a man.
Please tell me we can watch and review this one, because I want to.
Yes.
It was definitely better than this movie. This high school production directed and starring high schoolers. Yeah, I would solidly recommend it over this film. Shout out to Buchholz High School Drama.
Yes.
Apparently. Awesome. I genuinely want to watch that.
That sounds really good.
Will Scarlet gets a bit of a bonus. Friar Tuck wasn't bad, but I think overall we're going to have to give the award to Alan Adale.
This movie would have been much improved bringing Alan Hale back as Little John. Little John was kind of whatever.
Oh yeah, he was forgettable.
Yeah, he picked a fight with Robert when Robert first showed up to Sherwood, or rather, Robert picked a fight with him. And then Friar Tuck interrupted that duel that they were about to have to then himself duel Robert instead. And Little John just kind of stood there.
That was an attempt at witty banter when Robert was, you must be Little John because you're so big and your brain is so little.
Right. Again, just being a dick to people.
Right.
Oh yeah, then he called Friar Tuck fat.
Yeah. Super
like,
fat.
Multiple times.
Yeah, and I think this is another one of these cases where they're trying to crib from the 38 Adventures of Robin Hood, where there was this degree of banter between Friar Tuck and Little John, where Little John would make fat jokes at Friar Tuck, and Friar Tuck would make stupid jokes about Little John. But that was like a genuine banter back and forth between the two, as opposed to just this guy showing up and saying random mean things to people he doesn't know.
Like, you're dumb and you're fat.
Like,
was
seriously,
basically how that conversation went.
Seriously, you kind of expected him to just go, "Why are you so mad? It's just a prank, bro. Look, it's just a prank.
It was just his joke. Why are you getting all upset?"
Look, there's a camera. We're on YouTube."
So, it did have a little bit of that vibe.
It had a lot of that. That was his personality. Was exactly that dude, bro, prank show.
Yeah.
Like, look what I'm doing.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're not wrong. So, moving on. How robbed were the rich? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think Robin Hood, or his son Robert in this case, fared as a champion of the oppressed?
0.
Nobody got robbed.
All they were doing was reinforcing the feudal hierarchy. Did they interact with any peasants at any point?
Meg, Mother Meg.
Okay.
Yeah.
who they forced to put up some noblemen or some noblewomen.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll give it a 1 in that, presumably buying into the premise of the movie, the regent was going to be worse for the people of England in some way, and they were working to stop him. But that was pretty nebulous at best, and there was no real evidence of how people were going to be oppressed by him. There was evidence of them helping anybody.
They did show at the beginning. Now, okay, so I will say at the beginning, when Robert is riding around the regent's guys, he does rescue some peasants, presumably a peasant, from like being hanged.
That's true.
And like rides off with him.
Which was also a feat of archery.
Which was also a feat of archery.
Shot, shooting the rope that he was going to be hanged by.
The peasants were very upset, though.
They were very upset about the withdrawal of the Magna Carta.
And that's when he was like, "Tyranny," and he rides by and rips it out of his hand.
All right, I'll go ahead and give him a 2.
Oh no, I'll stick with I'm upping my 0 to a 1.
Yeah, it was not. They were not. No.
All right, so not so great there. That brings us to low points, which I think we've covered pretty extensively. There is a whole lot. I think what really just tops everything, though, is the quote-unquote romance between Lady Catherine and Robert.
The introduction of Lady Catherine and Robert, that is the low point for me in a series of low points amongst many.
And every interaction between the two of them was a low point.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't get better. It never got as bad as the opening attempted rape and sexual assault, but it never got good in any form.
No. Good or believable or not cringy.
Literally three conversations, and they're like, "I love you." But it wasn't even like that. Lady Catherine was like, "You're in love with me, aren't you?" And he was like, "Haha, yeah."
And they were never given anything to go off. These weren't in-depth conversations. They, at no point during these conversations did they have any meaningful talk about each other. They knew nothing about one another in any form.
So I think what it comes down to is that she had really sexy ankles and he had a really nice ass, and they bonded and they fell in love over their mutual adoration for each other's very specific body parts.
Yeah. And then the film ends with another riff off of the 38 Adventures of Robin Hood, with the king commanding the two of them to be wed, which is the same thing that happens with Olivia de Havilland and Errol Flynn. But there, it comes across as charming. The couple has developed a relationship over the course of the film. They seem genuinely joyous about the notion. Where in this version, it feels so weirdly out of place, so forced. It is made doubly weird by being commanded to do this by a supposed 9-year-old.
Right.
And also the way that he hesitated before saying that he loved her too.
Yes, he was like, yeah, let's get married.
Like, look, I was just trying to get some.
maple. You're really putting me on the spot here, King.
Yeah, man. I look. I didn't want to put a ring on it. I just there.
I just saved you from being Jamie Lannister out a window.
Yeah.
You throw me a rope here.
Come on, man, be a bro.
I did really like her ombre dress at the end, which seems like more than they were capable of in the Middle Ages. I don't know much about medieval fashion, but it was beautiful. It was very sparkly and ombre.
All right. Definitely their relationship, in particular how it begins, is the low point of the film. Any high points? Anything good we want to end on?
I really liked Robin Hood. He was really cool at the beginning, although it was kind of glossed over, like, I'm an earl now, where I used to be the champion of the peasant and now I'm a landowner. That actor was good, and I was like, okay, cool, like we're gonna be fighting some guys that are trying to revoke Magna Carta. All right. And then Robert rolls in and it just fell apart.
Yeah, it's never a good sign when the film falls apart because the lead has entered it.
That's true. Yeah, Annie, I agree. I enjoyed the actual Robin Hood. I would have watched a movie of like that dude and the other actors of the Merry Men doing a thing of, oh, they have to pick up their bows again and fight tyranny.
Yes.
Yeah, it seemed like there was some general camaraderie between Robin Hood and Little John and Will Scarlet and Friar Tuck.
They had better chemistry than the main romance.
Oh, by far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I enjoyed, like, I enjoyed that first 15-20 minutes, and I enjoyed the parts with Robin running around being old Robin Hood. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it is at least something to be able to say that the high point of a Robin Hood movie is Robin Hood.
Even if he's not the main protagonist.
Even if he's not the main protagonist.
Oh yeah, well, although when Robin finally came in and saw his son being a dick to all his friends, and he was like, that's just my son.
Well, okay, to be fair, he came in while Robert was in the middle of the sword fight with Friar Tuck, not while Robert was just lobbing weird insults at everyone. And
that's true.
Robin just introducing himself to people by getting into fights with them, that's normal. That's how he met Friar Tuck and Little John. That's how he does. That part felt pretty appropriate.
Okay. I'll defer to your expertise on that. Yeah. I mean, I laughed a lot, but it was not a comedy.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
That's my takeaway.
So this is the third film in our Splitting Arrows series. Annie, you've not watched the other two, which would be the 1922 silent film with Douglas Fairbanks and the 1938 one that we've mentioned so many times with Errol Flynn.
No, now I want to watch that one.
Oh, you should. It's excellent. It's like Thad's favorite movie of all time.
Pretty much. And this movie will, in some ways, kind of make more sense to you because of how much it's trying to be a sequel to that film. You'll get to see some of the best costumes reused too.
Hey.
And one of the best sword fights ever. Like, just an excellent sword fight. You definitely need to watch it. It is a fantastically good movie. Far superior. Like, seriously, if you have a Saturday afternoon to waste, anybody who's listening to this, and you're like, I'm going to watch a Robin Hood movie, pick that one. Pick The Adventures of Robin Hood. Do not watch The Bandit of Sherwood Forest.
No, don't watch The Bandit of Sherwood.
It is the dollar store version.
Unless you want to do like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 with your friends.
Yes.
Then watch The Bandit of Sherwood Forest.
It's like the Asylum Films version.
Yes.
It's the
mockbuster version.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies that definitely would have been improved by being on MST3K or being inebriated and watching it and doing your own.
Yes.
Yeah. Overall, an uninspired movie. Just not like I was expecting it to be more fun than it was, and it just kind of flubbed.
Yeah, I was expecting at least some better action.
Mm-hmm.
Or more action. It had so little.
Any action. There wasn't horses galloping in big packs.
Yeah.
Seriously.
The only thing I can say about the horses galloping is at least they kept the consistency across the screen. They didn't have any like misfits where it was like going one way then the other. So the editor was doing their job.
That's true. The cinematography was weird. The directing was pretty bad.
Yes.
Can't fault the editing. I think the editing was
Right.
as good as it could be. No real weird sound things. The score was fine. Wasn't impressive, but it was okay.
I don't even remember there being music.
It did not have a score that had like a catchy theme.
No.
It did have one lute song though.
That's true. We did get
Like
Alan Adale singing a song to some guards, and we heard more of that song than I was expecting, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was like going on so long that I was like, are they like saying important information in the lyrics? And I was trying to listen real closely because it was going on long.
Gotta remember to turn off the brain. just distracting those guards long enough to shank him in the back. Well, thanks for joining me again, Rick. Thanks for joining us, Annie. It was lots of fun. We'll have to bring you back again sometime.
Yes, this was super fun. I had a blast. I would like one that hits more of the boxes, of the Robin Hood boxes.
Yeah, not one of the subgenre that involves his child.
Yeah. Yeah, please have me back for Prince of Thieves.
I was gonna say that'd be the one.
The next film on the docket is Prince of Thieves, but not the Kevin Costner one, the one that came out in 1948 that is based on the novel by Alexander Dumas.
Ooh.
My thanks again to Richard Rick Hopkins Lutz and Annie Jacobson for joining me for that film that was a bit of a rough one. A lot of laughter, as you heard, but more at the film than with it, unfortunately. I certainly hope that our future presentations of the child of Robin Hood will come off better than this one did. Our previous entry in Splitting Arrows, The Adventures of Robin Hood from 1938 with Errol Flynn, was certainly a high mark. This one was a low. I hope we don't go lower. If you enjoyed this episode and are willing to help out a little bit, you can find us on patreon.com/intogreenwood or at ko-fi.com/intogreenwood. Every little bit helps. We use the funds to pay for our web hosting fees, research material, and 10% of all the money we take in goes to charity. Right now, we're still supporting Trees, Water, and People. That is all about sustainable methods for providing clean drinking water and healthy food for developing nations around the world. If you're interested in getting in touch, you can find us at Into Greenwood on various social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email us directly at intogreenwood@gmail.com. Thank you for spending another hour in the Greenwood.
Well, until next time, keep your bowstrings taut. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't have a good outro.